Let's talk some NFL free agency here on the Two Deep NFL podcast. Jeff Chadiha, NFL Network, Eric Eager, Super Sports. I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. We're going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending champions. Hollywood Brown, they've added. Irv Smith, Chris Jones is back. Drew Tranquill's back. Mike Pinnell's back. Have they done enough? Are they now the favorite to win the championship and pull off first ever three-peat in Super Bowl history? Where should L'Jarius Sneed be going? Who should be trying to get the Chiefs' corner? Aaron Donald is retired. Where does he rank all time? Did the Bears blow it with Justin Fields, or was there never really near the value that so many people talked about? Thoughts on the Steelers' quarterback plan? They add Fields to Russell Wilson. Kirk Cousins, a Falcon. He's not a Viking. Who did the better job on that one? Thoughts on the running back market? A lot of movement there. How does it play out with T. Higgins? Who's won the offseason so far? Best and worst free agent moves. We talk about it right now on the Two Deep NFL podcast.
You're listening to the Two Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. Two Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro was the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Two Deep is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Two Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Thank you, Curtis, and thank you for being a part of the Two Deep NFL Podcast. We appreciate it. And catch us via the Twitter. Remember, we are live on Tuesday nights, usually right there about 9 p.m. Central is when you can catch us here on the Two Deep Podcast. And a lot to cover today, guys, so let's get right to it. We'll start with the Kansas City Chiefs. They are defending champions. Could they keep Chris Jones? Answer is yes. Will they keep L'Jarius Sneed? We don't know. There's talk of a trade, but it hadn't happened yet. They had Hollywood Brown. They had Irv Smith on the offensive side. They had Drew Tranquill, or keep Drew Tranquill, keep Mike Pinnell on the defensive side. Have they done enough, Jeff, to, in your mind, be again the favorite to win what would be a third consecutive Super Bowl championship?
I think they're about where they were, right? I don't know what the odds are right now if the Niners are still the top team in that mix, but I think that they've got a great chance just because of the people you mentioned and Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce being here. But I always feel like, it's hard to win one Super Bowl. It's harder to repeat. And there's a reason why no one's done it 3 times in a row, because it's always a different team. It's not like Georgia Bulldogs running out there, or Alabama Crimson Tide, and you've got a whole bunch of dudes who were there, Michigan Wolverines guys who were there for 2-3 years playing the same positions and going through the same struggles to get to the mountaintop. It's a whole different bunch of guys. Probably 30% of the team is going to be different. And so you got new faces, you're relying on different people. And it's always going to be harder because Joe Burrow's back in the mix for Cincinnati. Aaron Rodgers is going to be healthy with the Jets. You've still got Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and all the other CJ Stroud now. So I just feel like, yeah, they've got the ability to do it, but ultimately, and injuries too being a part of this too, ultimately I wouldn't bet on it happening.
Are they the favorite in your mind, Eric?
Yeah, I think so. The Niners are currently the betting favorite. And I'm inclined to respect the market, but I think the Niners are in for a long season. They had to get rid of Eric Armstead. Brandon Ayuk is throwing like you up kind of text messages to Mike Tomlin. So I think the Chiefs are the favorite. Yeah. But I agree with Jeff. I mean, it's still a long shot, right? You're talking about like there's 7-1 or so, 13-2 or so. So you're talking about, 15% at best. But it's still, I think they're the favorite.
I think it's pretty easy to say, hey, you got Patrick Mahomes, you're the favorite. I get that, right? Yes, we understand that part of the equation. But Jeff, I think put it very well. They've added Brown, but they lost some depth. Willie Gay did leave and go to the New Orleans Saints. They've lost some of the support pieces there. They're going to need a good draft class, right? Because there's not a lot of money to spend. So the depth is going to be a question. I don't know that they're – I think their frontline guys might be as good or better. I definitely think Marquise Brown's a big upgrade over MVS on that part of the equation, but they don't have the left tackle spot. Donovan Smith is gone. So, yeah, I think it's pretty easy to get excited about what they've done. But in the end, I think you make a great point, Jeff. I don't know that they've really gotten that much better, which means they're still in the mix.
Yeah.
Say, wow, they're going 15-2 and they're going to steamroll through the playoffs. I don't see that.
Well, I think people look, and it's always the winners write the history, right? And so when it's all said and done, you remember the end. You remember the process of it. And so if I were to go back to mid-October on this podcast, a lot of people, cussing out the receivers, wondering if Travis Kelce was done. A lot of people were, you go back to the first game of the season, people were upset about Chris Jones. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like this team, as every team that wins a championship, you need to have everybody do something. And so when you start to lose pieces, I think L'Jarius Sneed's not here next year, it matters. If Marquez Valdez-Scantling, as much as people complained about him, made some big plays for this team. Now it's like Marquise Brown has to make those plays. You just don't say this guy's going to make them now because he's with the Chiefs, right? You have to put those people in those moments and have them do that. And again, it's do I think the Buffalo Bills are going to miss a last-second field goal in a playoff game? Do I think the Ravens are going to go out there with a jacked-up game plan? It's like, do I think the Chiefs are going to be injury-free? I mean, maybe this year they're the team that has what happened to the Niners with Dre Greenlaw happened to them in a playoff game. So you never really know. But that's why you also have to really embrace and enjoy the things that have happened with this team over the last 5 years.
Yeah, Eric said it. The Texans are a major threat. They've got a lot of cap room. They've been spending it. They've got the young quarterback, cheap quarterback. Jim Harbaugh's effect on the Chargers. Saw what Andy Reid, he took over a 2-win team, turned the Chiefs into an 11-win team. Well, the Chargers were in a 2-win team last year. So, they could take a big step. Bills, Bengals healthy. It's still the AFC is still a gauntlet, right? Like, we may look back in years and say, well, thank God the Bengals were beat to hell, right? That was part of what got back-to-backs done was the Bengals being beat up. Chiefs fans don't want to hear that, but it's timing, right, Eric? I mean, that's part of it as well.
Well, it's so funny because I got a little bit of flack from New England fans, but it's hard to win. It's harder to win the Super Bowl now. You have 17 games. You have one fewer bye. A lot of times the Chiefs have to win 2 more games than those Pats teams did to win the Super Bowl. And you need some luck. You need the Bengals being banged up in 22. You need this past year. I mean, this was a very they went through the gauntlet this year. There's no taking this one away. But this is a tough. I mean, the teams that have quarterbacks who are not on rookie deals, Burrow, Herbert, Allen, those quarterbacks are phenomenal. And the teams that have quarterbacks on cheap deals, the Steelers, the Texans, even the Titans, if you squint a little bit, there are teams that have quarterbacks, the Jaguars on rookie deals. Yeah, it's you look over on the other side, and you're talking about Kirk Cousins being like a top 3 or 4 quarterback on the other side of the ledger. It's just a much tougher conference, and the Chiefs have to be on their best behavior, roster building wise, every single year just to maintain themselves on this side of the ledger.
Look at the last 2 teams who've tried to do this: the Patriots and the Broncos. Both had, and I'm not wishing this on anybody for the Chiefs, both had very severe injuries happen to star players. Tom Brady with a knee injury, Terrell Davis with a knee injury, when they were both going for 3-peats. It's hard to do it because those things can happen. Those things are real things that can happen to your team.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, there's more to it than just pick the team you want to send him to and work out the compensation. L'Jarius Sneed, I'm talking about, would have to also work out a contract with the new team he'd go to. How much he's asking for is definitely a part of this equation, but who should be banging on the door of the Kansas City Chiefs trying to get L'Jarius Sneed right now, Jeff?
To be honest with you, this smells like Philadelphia Eagles territory all the way, right? This is like a Howie Roseman special. The other conference, they needed corners. Darius Slay and James Bradbury have gotten old. Now they're still there, but it's this feels like the kind of move that Howie Roseman would make. But I know the Vikings have interest. The Colts apparently have not shown a ton of interest. The Titans, their name has been put out there. That makes sense because they've got cap space, and he would fit what they do defensively. But it's going to have to be a team that has money, first and foremost, has money and has draft picks. And that's where it gets tricky because a lot of people, he's got to agree on the money. Chiefs have to agree on the draft compensation. And I feel like the way it's going, it's going to be both the Chiefs and L'Jarius Sneed are going to have to set probably less than what they would have expected when this whole process started.
I like the Eagles. I think that's an interesting one. We've talked about the Lions in the past as well. That's a team that might have some interest. But let me throw in a couple others. It's very Ramsey. Do they have any picks to send? If the Chiefs would be patient and take future picks, the Rams would give it out. They've done this before. It seems like something that they might do. How about the New England Patriots? Like nothing changes in New England. You brought in Diet Bill Belichick for your head coach. You brought in one of his disciples. He always wants a good cover guy. Eric, who is it? Who ought to be beating down the door for him?
I hope, I want Gerard Mayo to succeed. And so I don't want the Patriots to do anything that will jeopardize their ability to win in 2 years because that team cannot win this year. That roster sucks. And anything that if they draft a quarterback this year, that kid is going to get murdered. If they bring L'Jarius Sneed onto that team, he is going to go the way of Juju Smith-Schuster. If that team needs to trade the third pick to the Vikings, the Falcons, the Giants, some team that needs a quarterback, and they need to build that roster. They do not need to trade for L'Jarius Sneed. That team need, but I understand the sentiment. If Bill was still there,
they're one of the ones I've heard is.
I know, and they'd be insane to do it. I'm just telling you because the thing about guys, Bill coached his ass off last year. That team sucked. That team was stopping teams like the Bills. That team was stopping teams like the Chiefs. That team name me other than like Christian Barmore. Name me one blue chip play and Kyle Duggar. Name me more than 2 blue chip players on that defense.
No.
It's tough.
That Bill was coaching his ass off.
Judon got hurt.
Once you get it, and Josh Uche is the one guy that shows you everything. He got 1 year, $3 million on the open market. No one thinks anybody on the Patriots is any good. They all think that defense is just Bill coaching out of a paper bag. Once you get not Bill coaching that defense, everybody's going to see that defense is just as talented as that offense, which is not at all. That team needs to trade out of the third pick and get some NFL players on that roster. So no, they do not I don't want L'Jarius Sneed's career to die in New England. So I don't want him going there. I think he needs to go to Detroit. I think he needs to go try to win a championship on that side of the league table. Go to Detroit, win a championship with Dan Campbell.
With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, every project coming with a written warranty. Scan asphalt and concrete, keeping your parking lot safe, helping you and your business avoid unnecessary delays, costly expenses, making great first impressions. With clients, with customers, it's what they do. You focus on your business, they'll fix your parking lot. Been doing it for 30 years, GANasphalt.com. That's GANasphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot, GAN Asphalt Concrete. Aaron Donald retired. I know this because I was in a country that they don't speak English. And the only channel I got in English was the NFL Network. So the only thing I stayed up on in sports was free agency in the NFL. And I got to watch the Rams-Bengals Super Bowl like 5 times. The season video for the Rams that year like 5 times. And I got to admit, Aaron Donald was really, really good. Not that I didn't already know that, but it was kind of fun watching just how dominant this guy was. Where's he rank all time, Jeff?
There's a lot of recency bias when people have this conversation, and I'm a big Aaron Donald fan. He's top 5 for sure, but I saw Lawrence Taylor play. I saw Reggie White play. I saw Deion Sanders play. It's like those guys were amazing athletes and defenders. So I'm going to go with those three before I go with him, but he's certainly in my top 5 by far. He's the best defensive player of this generation for sure. Of the last 20 years, I would definitely put him in that category.
Eric, where do you put him?
Oh yeah, he's in that class with like LT, Reggie White, JJ Watt, Rod Woodson, Deion Sanders, like that group. I don't know which one's best, to be honest with you.
I'll make a pick. Pick somebody.
If I had to pick the best defensive player of all time, I'd still say Reggie White.
Okay.
When did you get to be gutless?
Yeah. He tried to slide out the
Reggie
back
White.
door.
Reggie White is Reggie White. My favorite defensive player of all time is Rod Woodson. The best defensive player of all time, in my opinion, is Reggie White.
I would probably tend to agree with you on Reggie White. I think Reggie White, JJ Watt, Aaron Donald along the defensive line. I mean, that's about the best I've seen in the modern era. Like if you said, look, we've got guys like Deacon Jones and, the older class, but like if we say, okay, when you can play 240 in D-line, we've got these guys, right? Merlin Olsen, Bob Lilly, some of the great old-time guys. Probably if you're tech savvy enough to be watching this podcast, you probably don't know who the hell those people are. Alan Page was a MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. Those guys are great. If we go to the modern age where you got to be actually a really, really big boy, it's Reggie White, it's JJ Watt, it's Aaron Donald. Those are the most dominant defensive linemen.
And Donald wasn't that big.
6'1", 290. Yeah. I mean, but just ridiculous as far as
Reggie White had 21 sacks in a strike shortened 12-game season.
12-game season.
Yeah. And then Reggie White had 16 and a half sacks at 36 years old in 1998 and then retired and then came back for the Panthers and had another I can't remember how many when he came back. He was insane. And then that was after he had, the record, even after playing in the USFL, he played for the Memphis Showboats for a few. He could have ran up the score even more, but he played in the other league for a few years.
Only guy I've ever seen throw grown men, 350-pound men around.
In the Super Bowl, didn't he have sacks on 3 straight plays or something like that in the New England Super Bowl in New Orleans? That was, and he obviously also and I know this doesn't matter that much, but from a history of the league perspective, he also was the first, the canonical free agent signing, right? Like he won that court case, became an unrestricted free agent, signed with the Packers, changed the course of that franchise, and he was a huge deal.
Changed the course of Brett Favre's career.
Is
there Brett Favre without Reggie White?
The Packers would probably be playing 17 games or eight home games in Milwaukee right now if Reggie White didn't sign that free agent deal in Green Bay, right? Let's be honest.
In 1998, at the age of 37, Reggie White had 16 sacks for the Green Bay Packers. Retired, sat out a year, came back in 2000, had 5.5 for Carolina. I don't want to overstate what he did after sitting out a year, but that's still a solid year, right? But 13, 18, 21, as Eric said, in 12 games, 18, 11, 14, 15, 14, 13, 8, 12, 8.5, 11, 16. That is unreal. Aaron Donald is not that. Reggie White is better.
Yeah.
But not many more are better than Aaron Donald. It was an impressive career to say the very least. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields. Is it Fields or is it Caleb Williams? The number 1 pick. I think Fields is better. No, you trade him. You get a boatload of picks. You put the ammunition around Caleb Williams. You trade the number 1 pick. You put ammunition around Justin Fields. A 6th freaking round pick. What the hell were all the talking heads talking about, Jeff?
Again, this is what happens when you've got a lot of time on your hands, a lot of people spreading rumors. And look, I thought there'd be a bigger mark for Justin Fields just because of the way the quarterback situation was shaking out with different teams like Atlanta and Pittsburgh and New England, the Raiders. There were enough people in the equation, but ultimately people figured out real fast at the combine that Bears are taking Caleb Williams. Got to get the guy away. And look, I still feel as if Justin Fields fell to the right coordinator with the right coaching staff that were committed to playing the kind of football that he can play, it would work. I always go back to something Robert Griffin III told me when he was backing out Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. He said the best thing about the Ravens and the way they do business is that they were all in with Lamar Jackson from the minute he started playing football for that team. They were going to build an offense around him. They were going to get players in to support him. They were going to play good defense. Justin Fields hasn't found that yet. But I think he's in a good place with Arthur Smith running the football. Mike Tomlin likes him. Russell Wilson's only there for a year, so maybe he has a shot there. But, yeah, I thought there'd be more people looking to make a move for him early on.
Yeah. What do you think, Eric? I mean, Fields, how much of it is you mentioned, I think Jeff makes a great point. Everyone knew you had to do something with him. That drove the price down. Also, you get him for like 1 year. Right? 1 year, and then you got to make a decision on that fifth-year option, which makes him really expensive, which makes it kind of interesting. I guess the Steelers are like, well, we'll have quarterback depth. Hopefully Wilson works out. If not, we'll be a pound-the-rock team with Fields, and we're trying to win right now, or at least let's get him in the building and see if we like him. Let's see what happens. Let's get to know the guy because the price is so cheap. What do you make of it?
I wish Fields wasn't so – it sounds hard to say. I wish Fields wasn't so likable. Because if he wasn't such a cult figure in Chicago, he'd be there, right? Because the best move for the Bears was to hold on to him as the bridge, right? Remember when the Eagles moved up to 2 and took Wentz? They still had Bradford, and they had Bradford and Chase Daniel and Wentz, and they were going to play Bradford. And then Teddy Bridgewater's knee blows up, and they trade Bradford to the Vikings for a first. There's no way they're getting a first for Bradford anytime from April to July. No way. No way, Jose, right? And then they get the 13th pick. It becomes Derek Barnett. Derek Barnett gets a game-winning strip sack in the Super Bowl. That's how these things work. That was the right way for the Bears to handle this, was to wait until Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles or something like that to offload Fields to a team that really needed him, a team that was desperate. The problem is, to Jeff's point, Fields was not helped at all in Chicago, and it was not his fault. He came in. Matt Nagy was a sitting duck. They did not do anything to really help him. Nagy certainly didn't want him. Ryan Pace was trying to save the marriage, traded up for him. It didn't work. And then, by the time he finally got some players around him, he had developed so many bad habits. His pressure to sack ratio is terrible. He wasn't good enough to forego the first overall pick twice, right? That's the truth. And so it's this weird situation where they did him wrong, but that doesn't mean you got to save the marriage, right? You still do the right thing. And so it's this weird, awkward situation. And then you get to the point where, from the rest of the league's perspective, it's, to your point, Petro, it's a two-way go. If he goes somewhere, let's say you trade a second-round pick for him. He goes somewhere and he sucks. Well, that's bad. You just waste a second-round pick on nothing. If he goes somewhere and plays anything worse than Jordan Love played last year, it still sucks, because then you got Dan Jones and his 4-year, $160 million contract in all likelihood on your books, and we all know how that happens. The corpses of NFL teams are littered with Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, all those terrible contracts. And so that's why no one wants Justin Fields, because you know that he's probably good enough to scintillate you and make you sign that deal. And the chance that he's actually good enough to be Jordan Love or better, which is what you need to be to actually make $50 million a year in this league, is probably small.
Well, I agree with you. I think the Bears, once you don't get your price, first of all, we're going to make up our mind on Fields. How did Ryan Poles get held up by Justin Fields?
Yeah.
How did he get talked into making that statement publicly? Just like, he's under contract, he's our quarterback, he'll line up, he's our starter. And then when you draft Caleb Williams, you go, well, he was too good to pass up. We did our homework, and this is it. Now we've got a competition. Because I also think Caleb Williams, I love the passing abilities of Caleb Williams. But the putting your head under a towel and crying after a loss to, was it Washington? I don't love. I'll talk when we win, but not talk when we don't. I don't love. Like, there are chinks in the armor of Caleb Williams. I think he should probably go number one. I think most people feel like the arm talent is just too much. He needs to go number one. But I do wonder if is he going to be a pain in the ass? Is he going to be a prima donna? Is he going to be a bit of a baby? Well, let's bring him in knowing we're not just giving it to you. And you have that with Fields, which is why to bring the Steelers into the conversation, Jeff. Now Russell doesn't get to be a diva. No, it's not just your thing. We got another guy. So let's everybody get your shit together and let's be on top of what's going on.
Yeah, I like the Pittsburgh Steelers situation right now because it's very low risk, right, on both sides of it with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And the way Arthur Smith coaches, you can see some packages for Justin Fields or whoever ends up winning the job. They'll probably use both guys in some way, but it's a win-win for them. Just because, again, Mike Tomlin is a fan of his. I think they're willing to be creative. They're getting rid of some I would say dead weight, but some pains in the ass like Deontay Johnson being gone now. I think they're going to get back to a lot more of a run-based offense, which is good for both these quarterbacks. And so I hope it works out for Justin Fields. And everything Eric said is completely accurate. I disagree with people saying that he's not ever going to be a starter again. I look at people like Baker Mayfield, different skill set, but he just was whatever. Just signed a big $30 million a year average salary deal with the Buccaneer, $38 million. Buccaneer. He was supposed to be dead in the water a year ago. And so the one thing I will say that I do agree with what Eric said is that, or Soren said it, is that you could have sat on him until after the draft and probably found a better landing spot for him, or people more willing to work with you to do something, as was the case with some of these quarterbacks. But it's done now. It is what it is.
You like how the Steelers are doing it, Eric?
I do. I mean, I think that you're getting the most important position in the NFL for almost nothing. You're giving yourself optionality. I think that the hard part is going to be, this is like old school, Jerry Burns, go back and forth between the two players type of thing. And most of the time, these NFL teams have way too much invested at the position to act this way. And I wouldn't be surprised if you saw these teams oscillating back and forth. The last time you saw a team, well, not maybe the last time, but one of the last times you saw it was when Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph had to replace Big Ben, right? And you went back and forth. That oftentimes can be effective. I think that's the way the Steelers are going to deploy it this year, and that's okay. The Steelers have to find their long-term option. It could be Fields. I don't think it will be. But I certainly don't think it'll be Russ, but I think that there are at least two good options there.
Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, Gann Asphalt and Concrete has been making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994, proudly serving the greater KC Metro. I'll get your seal coating now before you have problems as we start getting into heat and what have you. If you've been putting it off, Gann Asphalt and Concrete is your one-stop for all things parking lots. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com today. How about Kirk Cousins to the Falcons? You on board with this? I mean, I think you can bring the Vikings into this. Who got the better end of this deal? The Vikings to not have all that money tied up at Kirk Cousins, or the Falcons to actually get a veteran signal caller, but it comes at a very heavy price. Jeff, who did the better end of this?
God, I'll say Atlanta. I want to say the Vikings because I think they're going to obviously draft a quarterback. It's probably going to be J.J. McCarthy, but I feel like Atlanta had to do something. And being in that division, which is winnable every year since Tom Brady has left town in Tampa, they couldn't come back and not have an answer there. Kirk Cousins was playing good football at the end of, before he got hurt last year with the Achilles. They spent a ton of draft capital on skill players, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. The defense, they invested there last year in free agency. They have to do something now. I mean, I don't think they're a Super Bowl championship contender team, but they're certainly a playoff team with Kirk Cousins playing there. And bird in the hand, I'll go with the Falcons here.
Eric, how about it? I mean, I think there's a little bit of yes, both. If you've had Kirk Cousins, you're well aware he's not going to pick you up and carry you on your back. But if you've had, been living in the quarterback desert and you're just thirsty for any kind of quality quarterback play, you're at least going to get that in Atlanta. Okay, so both teams kind of got what they needed, but who got the better end of the deal?
Well, here's the deal. The Vikings aren't getting out from under it quite yet, right? They still owe Kirk $28.5 million. Well, they don't owe Kirk that. They already paid it, but $28.5 million dead money on the void years. So thank you very much, Kirk Cousins on the way out. But I think the Vikings win here in that they've needed to do this forever. The initial contract for Kirk was one of the worst deals that a team's ever made. Just because of length, because of the fact that it was fully guaranteed, and all of that. So finally, and Kirk played well enough for them to continue to re-up the deal. The point of the deal being so short was that every year and a half, he could go back to the table and renegotiate another 3-year fully guaranteed deal. And that's kind of how it continued to go. So I'm happy for Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah to get out from under that and start anew. I do agree with Jeff, though. I think that this, I like this move for the Falcons. The Falcons have won 7 or fewer games every single year since 2018. Kirk's the guy to win 8 games. So he's perfect for them. And he'll distribute the ball to Kyle Pitts. He'll distribute the ball to Bijan Robinson. He can make playmakers out of good, solid offensive contributors. And the offensive line that my boss Thomas Dimitroff built is better than most of the ones that he's had in Minnesota. And so I think Kirk is going to have some success there. The real question is, at 36 years old, off of an Achilles, does he have anything physically left? He was playing good football last year when he got hurt. So I think this is a win-win for both teams. The Vikings needed to move on. You were not competing in that division. The Lions are NFC Championship game bound. The Packers have a franchise quarterback and are really good. And the Bears have the first overall pick and are going to have Caleb Williams. You're not competing in that division with Kirk, Milquetoast Cousins, but I think the Falcons can compete in the NFC South with Kirk Cousins. So I think it's a win-win.
Jeff, you said J.J. McCarthy to the Vikings. Is that what you think the first-round pick they acquired, the second one, moving around picks to get up and get it, that's to take the 2 first-round picks and now move up to wherever they need to go to get the quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, McCarthy may be there at 11 for them, the way if it shakes out just right. I mean, there's so many receivers that have to get drafted and a couple of offensive tackles. I don't know if they're going to be gung-ho about getting into the top 3. That'd be a pretty bold move. If you're going to do a deal, it's probably the Patriots most likely to get out of that spot, but they need a quarterback. But yeah, they're certainly in a position to land a quarterback and another impact player. The reason I didn't pick the Vikings is because they have a lot of work to do. And as Eric said, they're the worst team in that division by far. And I don't know how they're going to get immediately better with what they have there. Besides, they got Justin Jefferson, and that's it. I mean, who else really moves you on that? They've cleaned house. I think Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah wanted to do this a couple of years ago. Now without the quarterback there, he can do a real rebuild, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah. I do like this. Moving on from a 36-year-old Matt Ryan, 36-year-old Kirk Cousins. Yeah. It is interesting how it all plays out. What do you think Minnesota's plan is with getting that second first-round pick, Eric?
I think they're going to move up as somebody who roots for Kwesi as a friend, I hope he goes up to 3 and he gets Drake May. I think that they're going to be content moving up to 4 and getting J.J. McCarthy.
Okay.
But why have to go to 4 to get him now if Atlanta's not taking a quarterback? Like, who else is going to be in the mix?
The Giants at 6.
You think they'll take a quarterback, huh?
Mm-hmm. And I think the Chargers with Joe Hortiz and my friend Corey Krawick as his director of player personnel, I think that the Chargers are a move. I think if the Vikings
finish the Charger thought, because I think people could think that you were going to say the Chargers are going to take a quarterback. That's not what you were going to say.
No, the Chargers are going to trade back. Right. That's the Chargers. The Chargers are a team that needs players, and so they're not about to take. They're going to trade back.
Okay. All right.
So if the Vikings don't pick a quarterback at 4, they're going to pick him at 5. And if they don't pick one at 5, the Giants are taking one at 6. The Giants are not a lot. The Giants have not restructured Daniel Jones's contract because they're cutting Daniel Jones next year.
So you think Penix and Bo Nix aren't top 12 quarterback options?
Mm-mm. I think that Kwesi got the 23rd pick in large part because if he completely we've seen trade ups into the top 5 happen this time of year. The Niners traded up to 3 around this time. The Jets traded up to 3 around this time in 18. I don't know if Kwesi wants to do that because I think that he doesn't necessarily want to get in a bidding war this time of year. I think he's going to try to find the best price at 3 or 4, and if he fails, 23 is the place to take Penix or Bo Nix. That's essentially how I see it. And then 23 and 11 in the Jimmy Johnson chart essentially will get you 4, and that's how I think that they did the calculation.
Jeff, the Ravens signed Derrick Henry. Tony Pollard moves to the Titans. Saquon Barkley to the Eagles. Austin Eckler, for almost nothing, goes to the Commanders. I think there's going to be some competing teams that are going to wonder, why didn't we kick the tires on this guy? Even Antonio Gibson went to the Pats, and that looks kind of James White-ish based upon his skill set up there. Running backs were in vogue. Why? After none of their current teams would pay him, they're all moving on and getting decent money.
Yeah, they proved their point, right? You didn't even mention Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley in that monologue. But I think the NFL is a cyclical game. I think you're seeing a lot of teams recognize that there is value at this position. Now, whether you want to pay for that value is another thing. But look, increased salary cap, little bump people didn't see coming. That helps the process. But 2, there's just so many teams that are playing light boxes that it's just become apparent that if you could find a running back who can be a game changer for you, you can still have a pretty nice weapon in place. Some of this stuff is situational, and so I think Saquon Barkley to the Eagles makes sense, even though it was a pretty high dollar amount because he's going to be an electric player in that offense. Josh Jacobs to the Packers makes sense because, again, a young quarterback with a lot of weapons around him. Tony Pollard, I think you've got a new coach there in Brian Callahan who came from the Bengals who wants to have backs like Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine, that kind of a system, get away from the kind of the heavy lifting type of back that Derrick Henry was. And so, I think that there are certain situations where backs matter and teams recognize that. Look, the Chiefs had Pacheco. The 49ers had Christian McCaffrey, 2 different situations, but they both had a chance to win championships because of those backs.
Yeah, they were definitely part of the equation as to why they were there. And I'll point out, Christian McCaffrey makes a lot of money and was valued by the 49ers, and they paid good money for him. And I think, I think part of the running back thing is just what it used to be, Eric. Tight ends don't make near what wideouts make. And nobody boo-hoos about tight ends. There's only a handful of tight ends that make any money, period. Right? Kittle, Kelsey, they're at the 14 range, and wideouts are up at 25, 24. What 26 for Mike Evans, 2 for 52 up there. But it's because running backs were the thing, right? The Herschel Walker trade and the big contracts.
Holdout, and then Super Bowl, and then quarterback contract. Yeah, exactly.
And so it's like, hey, we used to value it. They've just settled in to what their value is in the modern game. They still make a really good check. They just don't make quarterback money anymore. Settle down, everybody. It's all fine.
Yeah. I mean, McCaffrey and Kamara's contracts still stand out. You have not seen growth in the top end, but it's not like, and look, it's not like they necessarily earned this. You look at the 3 guys that got the franchise tag last year. Jacobs sucked last year compared to normal. Barkley got hurt and wasn't good when he played. And Pollard sucked last year. And they all got deals. And so I like that. That's good. That means that there's still you don't have to, and Joe Mixon got traded for and got a contract, even though he was kind of ass last year. There's some pretty like pretty good markers in the free agency pool. I mean, I don't think Eckler should have signed in the first week of free agency. He was terrible last year. I think all told, if this was a good year for running, like Jeff talks about light boxes, one of the reasons that offenses weren't good this year was that offenses struggled running the ball against 6 and 7 man boxes, and they were really good the year before. That's why Jacobs and Barkley and all those guys felt empowered to sit out or to hold out for contracts. So no, I think it's a good thing for running backs. I think running backs, to your point, deserve it to stabilize a little bit, and so that they know what to expect.
And we're also in a league now where there aren't a number of veteran quarterbacks who can go out there and just carry an offense. Like, a lot of these guys need some help. You saw what James Cook meant to Josh Allen in Buffalo. You saw what you saw CJ Stroud's potential, but you could see it being better with a better running back than Devin Singletary around him. I mean, I think a lot of these guys who have moved, like I said, are going to places where the quarterback is pretty young.
And it takes a lot of heat. Yeah, I agree with you. Let's talk a little bit about T. Higgins. Is it just saber rattling to get the deal he wants, Jeff? So I want to trade. Okay, we're not gonna. I would hope would be the response from the Bengals. But what do you see playing out here between the Bengals and T. Higgins?
Look, Duke Tobin, their general manager or personnel director, whatever the title he holds in that franchise, was talking about this earlier this offseason in terms of they like him, they want him to be there. Joe Burrow wants him to be there, but they're not treating him like they want him to be there because they haven't really talked about a long-term deal with him. And one of the worst things you can do to a veteran player who's 25 years old, who's got ability, is lock him in franchise jail and not talk to him about any kind of long-term deal. And so I understand the Bengals' perspective on this because they're looking at Jamar Chase and saying, we're going to have to pay this guy $30 million a year to be here. and T. Higgins is in a place right now where they want to keep him around to make another run at a championship. But yeah, he's going to be a very bitter player this year unless someone comes around and throws a ton of picks at him and is able to work a deal. I don't think he's getting traded. I think that he's going to be with the Bengals this year. It's like Jesse Bates happened to him 2 years ago. Like, he didn't like the franchise tag. He played through it, got a big deal with the Falcons. I think the same thing is going to happen to T. Higgins.
Eric, you see it that way?
Yeah, it's annoying, but the Bengals just don't do that many stupid things, right? I think the stupid thing would be to like trade T. Higgins for like pick 39 to the Panthers, right? And that's a common one. Like, they have the rights to Higgins for a year on a relatively modest amount. They can absorb the space with Chase not making what he makes. I disagree with Tommy Moe, although I love the callback. He's better than Alvin Harper was, even though that's a sick throwback.
Alvin Harper was more MVS than T. Higgins.
Yeah, that's an insult to Alvin Harper, but yeah, there's a lot of daylight between T. Higgins and MVS. But no, I think the Bengals just do the right thing kind of all the time, and I think the right thing here is to play Higgins on the franchise tag, and he'll show up. I mean, the last time a guy didn't show up, he ended up getting banished to the Jets. And his career was never the same.
Jeff, who's won the offseason so far? I know Eric's going to say the Texans right after you're done.
You know me well, Petro, but I'm gonna deviate because you called my answer.
Yeah, you know what? I will say. I mean, it's not. I'll say Philadelphia. I like Saquon Barkley going there. I like the C.J. Gardner-Johnson coming back. I think Bryce Huff is a nice addition as an edge rusher that gives them some leverage with Hassan Reddick. And I think I think they've had a pretty good run. I mean, given a team that didn't have as much salary cap space as other teams did to work with, I think they made some smart moves and they made their team better.
Well, I think it's the Texans, but I do worry that they just, like, we got all this money and we got to spend it, right? We'll see if all those signings end up being good ones. And I think it's tough to bring, I know the Eagles, one doing it this way, the Rams, one doing it this way, bringing a bunch of outside guys. Usually you supplement homegrown guys. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that works. But Eric, you got somebody other than the Texans?
Yeah, so it's the Texans, but I'm going to throw one against the wall and see what you guys think. I think the Carolina Panthers have done a really good job given the shit that they inherited. The Dan Morgan, Brant Tillis, the shit that they inherited. They got Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt to play guard, right? And remind everybody, they have to play a premium because of the whole everything that everybody thinks about them. Oh. They got Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt to play guard to protect Bryce Young. They got Deontay. They basically pantsed the Steelers for Deontay Johnson. That was a great trade. They got Dane Jackson, who's an underrated corner from Buffalo. They got DJ Wanham, who has been a very productive pass rusher. They got Kalavion Chason, who is, again, like a Brett Veach type signing, a first-round pick, bust, but can come in. It sounds like they have an outside chance of getting Jadeveon Clowney. They traded Brian Burns, who's one of the most overrated players in the entire NFL, and got, they didn't get the return for him that they could have got from the Rams, but they got a decent return. And yeah, I think, and they got the 33rd and 39th pick, which I know is not the first pick, which they could have had. I think that the Panthers will be an NFL team this year, which was an underdog going in.
Okay. Best and worst move in free agency. You got a best or a worst or both, Jeff?
Oh, best move in free agency. I will say Russell Wilson to the Steelers for cheap. $1.2 million. See if he can play, help your quarterback room. If he starts and plays well for you, you got to steal. If he helps Justin Fields get better, you get a benefit there, and it costs you nothing. So they've gotten better at quarterback without paying a whole lot of money.
Eric?
Bryce Huff, Steelers. Bryce Huff had a 20% pressure rate for the Jets. I know he's situational. I know that sometimes it doesn't translate, but we've seen it happen before where a situational guy goes to a different team and he doesn't have success. This is the perfect team to go to, right? Because they have actual other defensive linemen, so he doesn't have to carry the whole load. It's a great signing, great number for them. He's explosive. He's still young. He has almost no tread on his tires. It's a Howie Roseman signing.
I do like this one. Missouri 19 said Keenan to the Bears.
Yeah.
Trying to give a weapon to Caleb Williams since that's the direction they're going.
The Bears now have 4 draft picks, but yeah.
You got to pay him too.
Yeah.
But
True.
As the Phillies sit there say, gave him Keenan Allen, you get the 9th pick in the draft. All these guys you're giving to Caleb Wilson.
Yeah.
I like the Steelers dual move. I mean, Wilson was fine. You get it. $1.7 million to bring in a guy with that experience, quality move. But what made that great to me was Fields coming in right behind him.
Yeah.
Right?
And dumping Kenny Pickett, right?
Yeah. And walking on that. I like that a lot because it I think your point, Jeff, earlier, Steelers getting back to playing Steeler football.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're going to see. They got 2 quarterbacks that can play that style of football. I think Russell will get the ball to the Georgia kid. I think
Pickens.
Pickens is, I think, going to take a big step forward, and I like that. I like having the depth of the quarterback spot. Played it well. They didn't give up much, and they got good talent, so I like it. All right, don't forget, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. They got you covered. Anything with your parking lot, anything you need. If you run or own a business, remember, Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot, make your parking lot problems disappear. Since 1994, 30 years and counting. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Online at GannAsphalt.com. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Consumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the 2D Podcast.